Every person inside the gallery felt the vibration beneath their feet. Brother Matthias staggered back. The color drained from his face as fear overtook him. It wasn't the fear of death, it was the fear of a secret returning after 17 years. Then the bell rang again. A fourth time. "No," he whispered. Captain Rowan stepped beside him. "What does it mean?" Before the old monk could answer, everyone's attention shifted toward the entrance. The young stranger stood motionless. Until now, he had faced every accusation with quiet confidence. But the sound of the bell had changed him. His eyes searched the room, and for the first time, genuine fear crossed his face. Thomas noticed it immediately. If this mysterious young man feared whatever lay beneath the castle, then the danger was greater than anyone had imagined. Outside, rain battered the stained glass windows while thunder echoed across the mountains. Inside, no one paid the storm any attention. Every eye remained fixed on the newcomer. The boy Brother Matthias had called Elias. The boy whose arrival had unsettled kings, nobles, monks, and soldiers alike. Thomas studied him carefully. They shared no striking resemblance at first glance. Elias was taller, broader, and carried himself like someone who had survived years of hardship. Yet something felt familiar. Not his face. Something deeper. It was a strange sense of recognition Thomas couldn't explain, as though an invisible thread connected them. King Cedric slowly walked forward. "Elias!" The young man turned. The king's expression caught Thomas off guard. There was no anger. No suspicion. Only sorrow. "I never expected to see you again," Cedric said quietly. A bitter smile crossed Elias's face. "I spent years wondering if I'd ever see you." The king's shoulders stiffened, but he remained silent. Thomas watched the exchange carefully. This wasn't a meeting between ruler and stranger. It was the reunion of two people carrying the weight of an old tragedy. From the edge of the gallery, Lord Lucian observed everything without surprise. Concerned? Yes. Curious? Certainly. But shocked? Not in the slightest. Rowan noticed it too. Lucian already knew who Elias was. That realization was almost as disturbing as Elias's arrival. The masked noble finally broke the silence. "I warned them." His calm voice echoed through the chamber. The truth has a way of finding its own path. No one argued. Few trusted Lucian, but none could deny he had been right. Thomas stepped forward. His patience had run out. "Who are you?" The question hung in the air. Elias looked at him for several moments before answering. "My name is Elias." His voice remained calm. "For 17 years I've lived as a fugitive." He paused briefly. "I've hidden in forests, monasteries, abandoned villages, even prisons." His eyes never left Thomas. Every step of that journey was because of what we are. Thomas frowned. "What do you mean?" "Not because of anything you've done," Elias replied. "Because of what connects us." The words unsettled everyone. Brother Matthias closed his eyes. "Elias?" His voice was weary. "Please." For a moment, Elias looked at the old monk with genuine affection. Thomas suddenly understood. Matthias hadn't simply protected him. He had raised him. But Elias turned back toward Thomas. "He deserves to know." The old monk lowered his head. The secret could no longer be contained. Elias walked closer until only a few steps separated them. "Tell me something," he said. "Have you ever dreamed of a forest?" Thomas blinked. "Yes." "A lake?" His heartbeat quickened. "Yes." "A lonely tower?" Thomas stared. "And a man standing in the mist." The room seemed to disappear around him. Those dreams had followed him since childhood. He had never spoken about them. Never. Yet this stranger described them perfectly. Elias studied his reaction. I thought so. Thomas struggled to find words. How do you know that? Instead of answering, Elias reached inside his cloak. Several guards instinctively reached for their swords. Elias ignored them and pulled out a worn leather pouch. Inside was a silver necklace. Thomas's breath caught. It wasn't the necklace itself. It was the raven engraved on its pendant. His mother owned one exactly like it. Elias held it carefully. My mother gave me this the night she disappeared. Thomas's mind raced. Amelia. The same necklace. The same symbol. Every unanswered question suddenly pointed in one direction. He looked at Elias. Elias looked back. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Brother Matthias wiped tears from his eyes. His voice trembled as he faced both young men. You were never meant to meet. A heavy silence settled over the gallery. Finally, the old monk revealed the truth he had protected for nearly 2 decades. You are brothers. The word struck the room like thunder. King Cedric bowed his head. Duchess Eleanor covered her mouth, unable to hold back her tears. Even Lord Lucian's composed expression faltered. Far below the castle, a massive stone door groaned open. Something hidden for 17 years had finally begun to rise. Something moved beneath Blackthorne Castle. Far below the galleries and forgotten tunnels, a heavy stone door creaked open after 17 years of silence. A single torch burned beside the entrance, its flame flickering as slow footsteps echoed through the darkness. Step. Another. Then another. Each footfall carried the weight of someone returning from a place where no one should have survived. Dust drifted from the ceiling as the unseen figure climbed toward the surface. Above, the gallery remained silent. Brother Matthias's confession had left everyone frozen. You are brothers. Thomas struggled to steady his breathing. Only moments ago, he believed he was an orphan raised in the shadow of Blackthorne Castle. Now he had discovered a brother, a lifetime of lies, and a conspiracy stretching far beyond anything he had imagined. Across from him, Elias stood just as still. The revelation had answered one question, yet created countless others. After years of searching for his family, he had finally found one. Instead of relief, all he felt was loss. I always hoped I wasn't alone, Elias said quietly. Thomas looked at him. The bitterness in Elias's voice had faded, replaced by something far more vulnerable. I kept believing there had to be someone who understood what my life had been. For the first time, Thomas saw beyond the hardened survivor standing before him. He saw a young man who had spent 17 years running without ever knowing why. King Cedric lowered his eyes. Every word seemed to deepen the regret written across his face. There were reasons, he said at last. Elias let out a tired laugh. There always are. The reply carried no anger, only disappointment. Years of unanswered questions could not be erased by a simple explanation. Duchess Eleanor stepped forward, unable to hide her guilt any longer. She looked from Thomas to Elias, her eyes filling with tears. We told ourselves we were protecting the kingdom. Her voice faltered. But all we protected were our secrets. Neither brother answered. The silence between them said enough. Captain Rowan finally broke it. We're done hiding the truth. He turned to Brother Matthias. Tell us everything. The old monk hesitated. His hands trembled as forgotten memories returned. When I separated the children, the room fell quiet. Thomas looked at Elias. Children. Plural. Again. Matthias swallowed hard. There weren't only 2. No one spoke. There weren't 3 either. A chill spread through the gallery. The old monk closed his eyes before finishing. There were 4. Shock swept across the room. Thomas stared at him in disbelief. 4. Matthias nodded slowly. I remember for cradles. For children. And for destinies. His breathing grew uneven. But one of them disappeared. The distinction caught Rowan's attention immediately. Disappeared? The monk nodded. Not dead. Not taken. Simply gone. Before anyone could question him further, laughter echoed through the gallery. Everyone turned toward Sebastian. Unlike the others, he didn't seem surprised. You finally remembered, he said calmly. Brother Matthias looked at him in horror. You knew. I know where the fourth child went. Every face in the room turned toward him. Thomas stepped forward. Where is he? Sebastian studied him for a long moment before glancing toward the gallery doors. His confident expression suddenly faded. For the first time that night, he looked uneasy. Closer than you think. The answer sent a wave of unease through the room. Before anyone could press him further, the gallery doors burst open. A castle guard stumbled inside, soaked by the rain and struggling to catch his breath. Captain! Rowan reached him immediately. What happened? The eastern watchtower? The soldier swallowed hard. We found a body. The room fell silent. Whose body? Rowan asked. The guard hesitated, as if speaking the name aloud made it real. Prince Arthur. A stunned silence followed. The prince had died 20 years ago. Everyone knew it. King Cedric's face lost all color. Duchess Eleanor staggered backward. Even Brother Matthias looked shaken. Only Sebastian remained composed. He slowly closed his eyes before speaking. No. Rowan turned toward him. You know something. Sebastian looked at the others. The body isn't Arthur. Confusion spread across the gallery. Then whose body is it? Thomas asked. Sebastian's expression hardened. I don't know. But I know this. He looked toward the storm outside. Someone wants the kingdom to believe Prince Arthur has returned. Lightning flashed across the castle windows. Thunder followed an instant later. And somewhere in the darkness beyond Blackthorne Castle, someone was waiting for them to believe the lie. The corpse wore Prince Arthur's face. Not one that merely resembled him. The same sharp features. The same silver signet ring. Even the scar above his left eyebrow matched the royal records. As the guards pulled back the rain-soaked cloak, a heavy silence settled over the eastern watchtower. One soldier crossed himself. Another stepped back in disbelief. The third could only whisper. That's impossible. Because Prince Arthur had been buried 20 years ago. Yet here he was. Dead once again. Rain lashed against the tower as Captain Rowan climbed the narrow staircase, followed by Thomas, Elias, King Cedric, Duchess Eleanor, Sebastian, and Lord Lucian. No one spoke. Each step seemed heavier than the last. When Thomas entered the chamber, he immediately understood the guard's fear. The resemblance was flawless. Time had aged the man's face, but there was no mistaking who he appeared to be. Thomas glanced toward the king. Cedric stood motionless. For several long moments, he simply stared. Then tears welled in his eyes. They were not the tears of a ruler protecting his throne. They belonged to a man mourning someone he had never stopped missing. Watching him, Thomas felt a flicker of doubt. Perhaps the king had not been the monster he imagined. Perhaps he had suffered too. Elias noticed it as well. The anger he had carried for years didn't disappear, but certainty did. Hatred had always been easy. Understanding was far more difficult. The silence ended when Sebastian stepped forward. This isn't Arthur. Every eye turned toward him. Rowan frowned. What makes you so sure? Sebastian crouched beside the body and pointed toward its right hand. Look carefully. Rowan leaned closer. Then he saw it. The index finger was whole. According to royal records, Prince Arthur had lost the tip of that finger during a hunting accident as a teenager. This man's hand bore no such injury. The resemblance was extraordinary. But it was a disguise. Someone had gone to great lengths to fool them. Lucien folded his arms. They're trying to distract us. From what? Rowan asked. The real prince. His answer raised more questions than it answered. Thomas ignored the conversation. Something else had caught his attention. The dead man's coat. It was old, worn by years of travel, but a small embroidered symbol inside the collar stood out. A raven. Thomas froze. He had seen the same symbol before. On the letter his mother left behind. The discovery tightened the knot in his chest. Nothing about this was random. Before he could think further, one of the guards knelt beside the body. Captain. Rowan looked over. What is it? The guard held up a folded piece of parchment that had been hidden beneath the corpse. Rain had blurred the edges, but the writing remained clear. Rowan opened it. Only one sentence appeared on the page. You are looking for the wrong prince. The word silenced the room. Thomas read them again. Not the wrong heir. The wrong prince. The distinction was impossible to ignore. King Cedric lowered his head. The message seemed to strike him harder than anyone else. Elias noticed. So did Sebastian. The king knew exactly what it meant. Duchess Eleanor suddenly gripped the stone wall beside her. A forgotten memory surfaced. A royal celebration. Music. Candles. 2 newborn princes. Her breathing became uneven. Officially, only one royal child had been presented to the kingdom that year. But that wasn't what she remembered. Brother Matthias interrupted her thoughts. His eyes remained fixed on the parchment. You shouldn't have found that. Rowan turned sharply. What do you mean? The old monk's hands trembled. I know this handwriting. Thomas looked at him. His heart pounded. Whose is it? Matthias swallowed before answering. Amelia's. The world seemed to stop. Thomas stared at him. My mother's? The monk nodded. I would recognize her writing anywhere. Thomas felt the floor shift beneath him. If Amelia had written the message? Then it couldn't have been left there 17 years ago. Someone had placed it there recently. Only one possibility remained. His mother might still be alive. Before anyone could speak, hurried footsteps echoed up the staircase. Another guard rushed into the tower, breathing heavily. Captain! Rowan caught him before he collapsed. What happened? The Royal Crypt. Everyone turned. What about it? The guard struggled to steady himself. Someone broke in. Rowan reached for his sword. What was stolen? The soldier shook his head. Nothing. Confusion spread through the room. Then why are you here? The guard looked from the king to Thomas before answering. Because they left something behind. A cold silence followed. What was it? The guard swallowed hard. A living man. The tower fell silent. Without another word, Rowan turned toward the door. To the crypt. No one questioned the order. Whatever waited beneath Blackthorne Castle had been placed there for them to find. The screams echoed through the Royal Crypt. Not cries for help. Not pleas for mercy. They were desperate pleas for forgiveness. The sound carried through the underground passages beneath Blackthorne Castle, growing louder as Captain Rowan led everyone toward the open crypt doors. No one spoke. The only sounds were hurried footsteps, flickering torches, and the terrified voice waiting below. The Royal Crypt was a place reserved for kings and queens. No living man should have been inside. Yet someone had left one there. The staircase spiraled deep beneath the castle. The air grew colder with every step. Torchlight revealed rows of ancient carvings honoring rulers whose names had long been forgotten. Thomas walked beside Elias. Neither knew what to say. Only minutes earlier they had discovered they were brothers. Now they were descending into another mystery. After a long silence, Thomas finally spoke. "You already knew there was more to this, didn't you?" Elias kept his eyes ahead. "I knew nothing ever ends with one secret." Thomas sighed. "I was hoping you'd say I was wrong." A faint smile appeared on Elias's face. "I wish you were." Ahead of them, King Cedric climbed slowly, weighed down by years of regret rather than age. Each revelation seemed to strip away another layer of authority until only an exhausted old man remained. At last, they reached the crypt. The massive iron doors stood wide open. They were usually locked. Tonight, someone had left them that way. Rowan drew his sword. "Stay alert." The screaming had stopped. That silence felt far more unsettling. The group entered cautiously. A damp chill filled the chamber. Rows of royal tombs stretched into the darkness. At the center sat a man tied to a wooden chair. His clothes were torn. His face was bruised. The moment he saw them, he burst into tears. Not quietly. Not with relief. With absolute terror. His eyes darted wildly through the room until they landed on Sebastian. The reaction was immediate. "No." His voice shook. "No, please?" Sebastian stared at him. Recognition flashed across his face. "I know him." Rowan stepped closer. "Who is he?" "Ashevane." The name changed the atmosphere. Victor Ashcombe visibly stiffened. Lucian's expression sharpened. Even King Cedric looked uneasy. Thomas noticed every reaction. The prisoner wasn't just another victim. He mattered. Brother Matthias suddenly stepped forward. His face turned pale. "No." He whispered the word as though seeing a ghost. "You know him?" Rowan asked. Matthias nodded slowly. "He died 16 years ago." Silence swept through the crypt. Thomas stared at the prisoner. Another dead man. Another impossible return. Asher lowered his head before speaking. "They lied." His voice barely rose above a whisper. "They lied to everyone." Rowan knelt beside him. "Who?" Asher hesitated before answering. "The keepers." The unfamiliar name echoed through the crypt. Most looked confused. Not Sebastian. Not Lucian. Not King Cedric. Each of them reacted differently, but none looked surprised. Thomas noticed. So did Rowan. Whatever the keepers were, they had just become part of the mystery. Without warning, Asher looked directly at Thomas. His breathing stopped. His eyes widened. He stared as though he had seen someone impossible. Then he whispered, "You're not supposed to be alive." The word struck Thomas like a blow. "What did you say?" Asher shook violently. "No. No." His fear turned into frantic laughter before collapsing into tears again. Finally, he looked back at Thomas. The prophecy was wrong. No one interrupted him. The first child. The second. The third. He paused. The fourth. The number surfaced again. For children. For destinies. It was no longer a coincidence. Only 3 were meant to survive. The crypt fell silent. Then Asher slowly raised his trembling hand and pointed at Thomas. "You?" His voice cracked. "Were the one meant to die." Thomas stumbled backward. Before he could lose his balance, Elias caught his arm. The gesture came without hesitation. Neither brother acknowledged it. They didn't have time. Every answer only uncovered another nightmare. Then Asher slowly turned toward one of the oldest royal tombs. His expression filled with horror. "No." Everyone followed his gaze. The tomb belonged to Queen Ilara Valemorn. It had remained sealed for decades. A sharp knock echoed from inside. Once. Then again. The guards froze. Another knock followed. Slow. Deliberate. Captain Rowan tightened his grip on his sword. No one dared move. Then a weak voice emerged from within the tomb. Old. Frail. But unmistakably alive. Arthur. A brief silence followed. Then the voice finished. Arthur was never the heir. The words echoed through the crypt. Even Sebastian stood frozen. No one had expected the dead to speak. And no one was prepared for what those words meant. The voice came from a sealed tomb. Everyone heard it. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't an echo. It was an old man's voice, weak but unmistakably alive. The words lingered in the crypt. Arthur was never the heir. No one moved. The torches flickered against the damp stone walls as disbelief settled over the chamber. Queen Ilara's tomb had remained sealed for nearly 20 years. Nothing inside should have been alive. Yet someone had spoken. Captain Rowan stepped toward the coffin, sword drawn. Every instinct warned him to stop, but years of command had taught him never to retreat from the unknown. What opened this tomb? He asked. No one answered. The massive stone coffin sat beneath an arch carved with ancient royal symbols. Dust covered every surface. Cobwebs stretched across the corners. Nothing suggested anyone had entered. Yet the voice had been real. Rowan reached for the edge of the stone lid. Don't. Sebastian's warning stopped him. The room turned toward him. For the first time that night, his confidence had vanished. Why not? Rowan asked. Sebastian kept his eyes fixed on the tomb. Because that voice didn't come from inside it. A chill spread through the crypt. Thomas looked around. If the voice hadn't come from the coffin, then where had it come from? Brother Matthias suddenly stepped forward. His attention remained fixed on the royal crest above the tomb. A memory surfaced. There was another chamber. King Cedric frowned. What chamber? The Chamber of Witnesses. The name immediately changed several expressions. Sebastian lowered his eyes. Lucien's posture stiffened. Even Cedric seemed unsettled. Thomas noticed every reaction. Whatever this chamber was, everyone important already knew about it. Rowan looked back at Matthias. What was it? A hidden room beneath the royal tombs, the monk replied. Long ago, chosen witnesses were kept there to record the truth. The truth about what? Births. Coronations. Successions. And deaths. The crypt fell silent. If those records still existed, they could expose every lie the kingdom had protected. Before anyone spoke again, the tomb shifted. A harsh scraping sound echoed through the chamber. Several guards raised their swords. The stone lid moved again. Dust poured from its edges. Thomas felt his pulse quicken. The coffin slowly slid aside. Then a hand appeared. Thin. Old. Shaking with effort. The guards surrounded the tomb, but no one attacked. An elderly man slowly climbed out from beneath the coffin. Not from inside it. From a hidden passage below. Brother Matthias stared in disbelief. Impossible. The old man looked at him and smiled faintly. Matthias. The monk's eyes filled with tears. I thought you were dead. So did everyone else. The stranger stepped fully into the torchlight. His white hair reached his shoulders. His face was deeply lined, yet his eyes remained sharp. They carried the weight of someone who had spent decades guarding a terrible truth. Thomas looked around. No one spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. Who is he? Brother Matthias answered quietly. Brother Alden. The name meant nothing to Thomas. But it clearly meant everything to the others. King Cedric lowered his head. Sebastian remained perfectly still. Lucian watched with renewed interest. Brother Alden slowly surveyed the room before stopping in front of Thomas. His expression softened. "You're all too late." Rowan frowned. "Too late for what?" "The crown has already been found." The statement drew everyone's attention. Thomas frowned. "The Brotherhood is still searching for it." Alden slowly shook his head. "No. They're coming because someone found it first." Thomas felt another question rising. Before he could ask it, Alden spoke again. "Your mother tried to stop this." The mention of Amelia caught Thomas off guard. "You knew my mother?" "I knew her well." "What did she do?" Alden's face filled with regret. "She wasn't hiding the heirs." Everyone looked at him. "She was protecting the crown." Thomas frowned. "From the Brotherhood?" The old man slowly shook his head. "No." His answer surprised everyone. She was protecting the crown from the children. The crypt fell into uneasy silence. No one understood what he meant. Before anyone could question him, a loud horn echoed through the castle. Once. Then again. A third blast followed. Captain Rowan recognized it immediately. His expression hardened. "That's the battle alarm." Footsteps thundered down the staircase. A guard rushed into the crypt, soaked by rain and barely able to breathe. "Captain! What happened?" "The eastern wall." "What about it?" The soldier swallowed. "An army has surrounded the castle." No one expected those words. King Cedric stepped forward. "Whose army?" The guard hesitated. His answer came in a whisper. "The Brotherhood." Silence spread through the crypt. The war they had feared was no longer approaching. It had arrived. War had arrived. The horns continued to echo across Blackthorne Castle as soldiers rushed along the battlements. Torches flared to life, illuminating the rain-soaked walls while guards took their positions. No one knew how the Brotherhood had reached the castle unnoticed. But they were here. And they hadn't come to negotiate. Captain Rowan climbed the western tower and looked beyond the gates. Hundreds of riders stretched across the valley, their banners snapping in the storm. Black standards bearing a silver crown swayed above the ranks. An organized force. Disciplined. Prepared. This was no band of raiders. "They've been planning this for years," Rowan said. King Cedric joined him at the battlement. "They wouldn't attack unless they believed they could win." Below, soldiers hurried to reinforce the gates while archers lined the walls. Thomas and Elias reached the tower moments later. For the first time, both brothers stood side by side without suspicion. They looked toward the valley. Neither had expected their reunion to end with a siege. Elias broke the silence. "They are not here for the castle." Rowan looked at him. "They're here for us." No one argued. Everything that had happened pointed to the same conclusion. The Brotherhood wasn't chasing a throne. It was hunting the heirs. A trumpet sounded from the enemy camp. A lone rider emerged, carrying a white flag. He stopped just beyond arrow range. "I bring a message," he shouted. Rowan nodded to the guards. "Let him speak." The rider removed his hood. Thomas recognized him immediately. Asher. The prisoner from the crypt. Except. That was impossible. The real Asher remained tied below. Elias narrowed his eyes. A double. The rider smiled. "You learn quickly." He raised a sealed scroll. "My master offers peace." Rowan laughed coldly. "An army outside our walls doesn't look like peace." "It depends on your answer." A guard lowered the drawbridge just enough for the messenger to approach. Rowan broke the royal seal and unfolded the letter. His expression darkened as he read. King Cedric took the parchment. Only a single sentence was written across the page. Surrender the 4 heirs before sunrise, and the kingdom will be spared. A heavy silence followed. Thomas looked at Brother Matthias. They know. The old monk nodded. They always knew. Elias frowned. But they shouldn't know there are 4. Brother Alden answered quietly. They know because one of them was never lost. The words caught everyone's attention. Thomas turned sharply. What do you mean? Alden's gaze drifted across the people gathered on the wall. The 4th child wasn't kidnapped. He was raised by the Brotherhood. No one spoke. The revelation explained everything. The Brotherhood had never been searching for all 4 heirs. It had already possessed one. King Cedric folded the letter. If that's true. Alden finished the thought. Then the 4th heir is leading them. Before another word could be spoken, the enemy ranks slowly parted. A single rider emerged. He wore black armor without a crest. His face remained hidden beneath a steel mask. The entire army fell silent as he rode toward the castle. Even from a distance, his presence commanded absolute loyalty. He stopped within sight of the walls. Without removing his helmet, he looked directly at Thomas. Then, he slowly raised his right hand. On his finger rested a ring identical to the one Thomas carried. The Duke's ring. There should have been only one. Thomas's breath caught. Elias stared in disbelief. Brother Matthias closed his eyes. No. The masked rider drew his sword and pointed it toward the castle. His voice carried clearly through the rain. Open the gates. I've come home. The words echoed across the valley. Every soldier on the wall stood frozen. Because only one person had the right to call Blackthorne Castle home. I've come home. The words lingered over the battlefield as rain poured across the valley. No one on the castle walls moved. The masked rider remained perfectly still, his sword lowered at his side. Behind him, hundreds of soldiers waited without a sound, watching the castle as though victory was already theirs. Thomas couldn't take his eyes off the ring. It was identical to the one the late Duke had left behind. There should never have been a second. Captain Rowan stepped to the edge of the battlements. You claim Blackthorne Castle belongs to you. The rider looked up. It always did. His calm voice carried through the storm. King Cedric frowned. Remove your mask. The rider gave a slight shake of his head. You already know who I am. Cedric's expression hardened. I know no such thing. Then you've spent 17 years lying to yourself. The word struck deeper than any weapon. Thomas looked toward the king. For a brief moment, Cedric seemed shaken. It was enough to convince Thomas that the stranger's words carried some truth. Elias stepped forward beside him. If he's the 4th heir. Thomas finished the thought. Then why is he with the Brotherhood? Brother Alden answered quietly. Because he was raised to believe we betrayed him. No one argued. A child raised by enemies would see them as family. The masked rider raised his hand. Behind him, the Brotherhood's army parted once again. Several prisoners were brought forward in chains. Thomas's heart sank. They were villagers from Blackthorne. Men and women he recognized. Some had worked in the castle for years. Others had helped raise him as a child. The message was clear. The Brotherhood had not come empty-handed. They have hostages, Rowan said. The rider nodded. I don't want bloodshed. Then release them, Rowan replied. I will. The rider's voice remained steady. As soon as you surrender the heirs. Silence followed. No one expected Rowan to agree. He didn't. You'll have your answer. The captain raised his hand. Archers drew their bows. The rider glanced at the wall and smiled. I was hoping you'd choose pride. He turned his horse and rode back toward his army. Before reaching his lines, he stopped once more. Without looking back, he spoke. You have until sunrise. Then he disappeared into the ranks. The gates remained closed. Inside the castle, tension spread through every corridor. Soldiers sharpened weapons. Servants carried supplies to the walls. The castle had become a fortress preparing for war. In the council chamber, the atmosphere was no calmer. A map of the kingdom lay across the table. Captain Rowan studied every possible route. They outnumber us nearly 4-1. King Cedric folded his arms. We've defended this castle before. Not against an enemy that already knows its secrets, Rowan replied. Brother Alden pointed toward the map. There is another danger. Everyone looked at him. The Brotherhood isn't attacking to destroy Blackthorne. They're trying to reach the vault. Thomas frowned. What vault? The Crown Vault. Brother Matthias sighed. I hope no one would ever speak of it again. Thomas looked between the two old men. What is it? Brother Alden answered. The place where the crown of Ashcombe was hidden. Elias narrowed his eyes. I thought it was lost. So did the kingdom. Alden's expression grew serious. But someone has already found its location. Thomas felt a growing sense of unease. Who? Before Alden could answer, the chamber doors burst open. A wounded scout stumbled inside. His armor was stained with blood. Captain! Rowan caught him before he fell. What happened? They breached the outer tunnel. Rowan's face darkened. Impossible. We sealed it years ago. The scout shook his head. They didn't break in. They were already inside. The room fell silent. Thomas slowly turned toward the others. If enemies were already beneath the castle, then the siege outside had never been the real attack. It had only been a distraction. The enemy was already inside. Captain Rowan stared at the wounded scout, hoping he had misheard. You saw them? The scout nodded weakly. They're moving through the old tunnels, beneath the castle. A cold silence swept across the council chamber. The siege outside had never been their greatest threat. The real danger was already under their feet. Rowan spread the castle map across the table. His finger traced a network of faded passages beneath Blackthorne. Most of these tunnels were sealed years ago. Brother Matthias leaned closer. Most, but not all. Thomas looked at him. You knew. The old monk sighed. I knew there were hidden passages. I never imagined anyone else had found them. Brother Alden shook his head. They didn't find them. They were shown. The room fell silent. Someone had guided the Brotherhood into the castle. King Cedric looked around the chamber. Which means we have a traitor. No one spoke. Every person suddenly became a suspect. Captain Rowan folded the map. We divide into teams. One group protects the Crown Vault. The other clears the tunnels. I'll go below, Thomas said. So will I, Elias added. Rowan hesitated before nodding. You stay together. Neither objected. They had only known each other for hours, but separating now would only make them easier targets. Within minutes, Rowan, Thomas, Elias, and a squad of guards descended into the forgotten tunnels. The air was damp and stale. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, echoing through the darkness. Torchlight barely reached beyond the narrow passage ahead. As they moved deeper, Thomas noticed fresh footprints in the mud. They passed through here. Rowan knelt beside the tracks. Less than an hour ago. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. No one spoke above a whisper. Every shadow seemed alive. Suddenly, Elias raised his hand. Wait. The group stopped. A faint scraping sound echoed from somewhere ahead. Metal against stone. Then silence. Rowan motioned for two guards to advance. They had barely taken 3 steps when arrows shot from hidden openings in the walls. One guard fell instantly. The other collapsed with an arrow buried in his shoulder. "Ambush!" Rowan shouted. The remaining soldiers rushed for cover. Thomas pulled the wounded guard behind a stone pillar as more arrows flew through the tunnel. Whoever had planned the attack knew the castle's defenses perfectly. "They prepared this," Elias said. Rowan nodded grimly. "They've been here before." The arrows stopped as suddenly as they had begun. A voice echoed through the tunnel. "You've become predictable, Captain." Rowan recognized it immediately. "Show yourself." A hooded figure stepped from the shadows. His face remained hidden, but his posture was familiar. Too familiar. Thomas searched his memory. Then it struck him. He had seen this man walking freely through the castle only days earlier. "The royal architect," Thomas whispered. The hooded man smiled. "I wondered how long it would take." Rowan's expression darkened. "You designed these tunnels." "I designed the castle." The confession stunned everyone. "For 20 years, I've maintained every wall, every passage, and every hidden entrance." He spread his arms. "I know Blackthorne better than anyone alive." Thomas stepped forward. "Why betray the kingdom?" The architect laughed quietly. "I didn't betray it. I built it." His eyes hardened. "But it was stolen long before I was born." Elias frowned. "Who are you?" The man slowly removed his hood. Brother Matthias gasped. "I know him." Thomas looked at the old monk. "Who is he?" Matthias answered in disbelief. "Edmund. The son of the castle's former master builder." Edmund nodded. "My father died protecting a secret. And I've spent my life making sure it finally comes to light." Before Rowan could arrest him, Edmund pulled a lever hidden in the wall. A deafening rumble shook the tunnel. The floor split apart. Thomas and Elias jumped back just in time, but 3 guards lost their footing and disappeared into the darkness below. The stone bridge between them collapsed. Edmund now stood safely on the opposite side of the chasm. He smiled one last time. "You're too late." Then he vanished into the darkness. The rumbling slowly faded. Rowan stared across the broken passage. "We've lost the tunnel." Brother Alden's warning echoed in Thomas's mind. The Brotherhood wasn't trying to conquer the castle. They were racing toward the crown vault. And with Edmund leading them, they now knew every hidden path to reach it first. The bridge collapsed behind Edmund. The thunderous crash echoed through the tunnels as chunks of stone disappeared into the darkness below. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Captain Rowan looked across the widening gap. "They're heading for the crown vault." Dust filled the air as Thomas peered into the chasm. There was no sign of the guards who had fallen. Only darkness. "We can't cross here," he said. Rowan nodded. "There has to be another route." Brother Alden stepped toward the broken edge, studying the ancient stonework. "There is." Everyone turned to him. "A passage built long before the castle." Brother Matthias looked uneasy. "I thought it had been destroyed." "So did everyone else." Alden brushed away centuries of dust from a faded carving on the wall. Hidden beneath it was the outline of a narrow doorway. The first kings built escape tunnels beneath the fortress. Rowan drew his sword. "Can it still be opened?" Instead of answering, Alden pressed a loose stone. A deep rumble echoed through the tunnel. The concealed doorway slowly swung inward. A rush of cold air escaped from the darkness beyond. Thomas lifted his torch. The passage stretched into the distance, untouched for generations. Rowan led the way. "Stay close." The corridor was narrow, forcing everyone into a single line. Ancient symbols covered the walls, their meaning long forgotten. As Thomas studied them, one mark caught his attention. A raven enclosed within a crown. The same emblem engraved on his mother's necklace. He stopped. Elias. His brother turned. Have you seen this before? Elias stepped closer. My necklace has the same symbol. Brother Alden overheard them. It was never a family crest. Thomas frowned. What was it? A promise. Neither brother understood. Before they could ask another question, the passage opened into a circular chamber. At its center stood four stone pedestals. Each held an empty cradle carved from white marble. Thomas counted them twice. 4. Again. Every clue pointed back to the same number. Brother Matthias lowered his head. This is where they were brought. Thomas stared at him. The heirs? The old monk nodded. On the night they were born. Elias slowly walked around the chamber. So we were all here. For a few hours, Alden replied. Before fate scattered you. Thomas noticed fresh footprints covering the dusty floor. They've already passed through. Rowan crouched to examine them. At least 6 men. He looked toward the tunnel ahead. We're losing time. The group hurried onward. The passage ended at an enormous bronze door decorated with the royal crest. Unlike every other door in the tunnel, this one stood open. Captain Rowan's expression darkened. We're too late. He pushed the door wider. Beyond it lay the crown vault. Rows of ancient weapons and royal treasures lined the chamber. Some had rested there for centuries. Now many display cases stood empty. Drawers had been pulled open. Scrolls lay scattered across the floor. Someone had searched the vault from end to end. Thomas scanned the room. What were they looking for? A familiar voice answered from the shadows. Not what? Everyone spun around. Edmund stepped into the torchlight. You should be asking who. He wasn't alone. Several armed Brotherhood soldiers surrounded him. At the center of the chamber stood the masked rider. His black armor reflected the torchlight as he rested one hand on an ancient stone pedestal. Upon it lay a weathered leather journal. The Duke's journal. Thomas recognized it immediately. You found it, Thomas said. The masked rider nodded. It contains the final truth. Rowan raised his sword. Step away from it. The rider ignored him. Instead, he opened the journal to its final page. His eyes moved across the faded handwriting. When he finished reading, he looked directly at Thomas. Then at Elias. A faint smile appeared beneath his mask. You've spent your lives believing the wrong story. Thomas felt his pulse quicken. What does it say? The rider slowly closed the journal. It says there were never 4 heirs. Silence filled the vault. Brother Matthias stared at him in disbelief. That's impossible. The rider's gaze never left Thomas. The Duke didn't father 4 children. He paused. He fathered 3. Every person in the chamber froze. If that was true, then one of the 4 heirs wasn't the Duke's child at all. The Duke fathered only 3 children. The masked rider's words echoed through the crown vault. For a heartbeat, no one reacted. Then every eye turned toward Thomas and Elias. If there were only 3 true heirs, who was the 4th? Captain Rowan kept his sword raised. You're lying. The masked rider calmly closed the Duke's journal. I wish I were. Brother Matthias stepped forward. I delivered those children myself. So you believed, the rider replied. A shadow crossed the old monk's face. For the first time, doubt crept into his memories. That stormy night had been chaos. The castle was under attack. Servants rushed through the halls. Orders changed by the minute. Could someone have switched one of the infants without anyone noticing? Thomas broke the silence. Who isn't the Duke's child? The rider looked at him but didn't answer. Instead, he tossed the journal across the room. Thomas caught it before it hit the floor. The final page contained only a few faded lines. 3 heirs carry the Duke's blood. The 4th carries the kingdom's fate. Thomas frowned. There are no names. There never were, Brother Alden said. The Duke feared the journal would fall into the wrong hands. Elias looked toward the masked rider. If you know the truth, take off your mask. The rider stood motionless. My face changes nothing. It changes everything, Rowan replied. Without warning, Rowan charged. Steel clashed as the masked rider drew his sword. The impact echoed through the vault. Rowan attacked again, but his opponent matched every strike with remarkable precision. Neither gained the advantage. Watching them, Thomas realized something. The rider fought exactly as Captain Rowan did. The same footwork. The same guard. The same finishing strikes. Elias noticed it too. Where did you learn that style? The masked rider smiled beneath his helmet. The same man who taught him. Rowan's expression changed. I never trained you. No. The rider forced Rowan back with a powerful strike. You trained my father. Before anyone could make sense of those words, Edmund pulled another hidden lever. A grinding noise filled the vault. The heavy bronze doors slammed shut. Several guards rushed toward them. They wouldn't budge. We're trapped, one shouted. Smoke began pouring through narrow openings in the ceiling. Brother Alden's face tightened. Sleep powder. Rowan immediately covered his mouth. Don't breathe it. The guards wrapped cloth over their faces, but the room quickly filled with the grey haze. One by one, soldiers dropped to their knees. Thomas felt his vision blur. Beside him, Elias struggled to remain standing. Across the chamber, the masked rider walked calmly through the smoke. He stopped in front of Thomas. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the rider reached into his cloak and placed a small object in Thomas's hand. A silver key. It matched the raven symbol on Thomas's necklace. Keep it safe, the rider said quietly. Thomas looked up in confusion. If the Brotherhood finds it. The rider glanced toward the sealed doors. Everyone dies. Thomas tightened his grip on the key. Why are you giving this to me? The rider hesitated. Then, for the first time, his voice carried genuine emotion. Because I can't. Before Thomas could ask what he meant, Edmund called out. We have to leave. The masked rider stepped back toward the hidden passage. Just before disappearing into the darkness, he looked at Thomas one last time. When the time comes. Don't trust the crown. The secret passage closed behind them. Moments later, the smoke cleared enough for Rowan and the remaining guards to force the bronze doors open. The vault was empty. The Brotherhood was gone. Only the silver key remained in Thomas's hand. He stared at the strange symbol carved into its surface. Brother Matthias took one look at it and froze. His voice was barely audible. I buried that key. He slowly lifted his eyes to Thomas. With the Duke.